All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Colin Campbell. Colin, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. I have been looking forward to this. And I want to start by giving the folks at the podcast guests platform a shout out because you and I, Colin, we wouldn't even be talking right now if it weren't for them and the work that they're doing. And they are doing an amazing work helping guests like yourself and podcast hosts like myself get connected. And I'm incredibly grateful for those guys and the work that they're doing in this world. And so what I'd like to do, Colin, to start off with is I want to turn it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context. I really want to give the listeners a really good understanding of who you are. And so let's start there and have you share a little bit about, what do you do? Who do you serve? What inspires you most about the work that you do? And even give us some backstory into how you got into doing this and becoming an entrepreneur as well.
Thank you, Kevin. Serial entrepreneur, 30 years. Okay. Let me tell you this, 10 years researching and writing the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. The last 2 years with a staff of 6 interviewing over 200 people for this book. And we actually have about 50 of the top interviews that went into the book.
Okay.
I started humble beginnings. Let me tell you, I started as a farmer in Canada, and we had grown up in the farms. I graduated from college, I started working on the farm, and through all my money from that, credit cards, loans, whatever I could scrape together to start my first business. We got it up and running. We launched it. It was a software rental business.
Okay.
And in 12 months, we were shut down by the government. The government outlawed our business.
Wow.
But we were very smart. We launched a BBS, a bulletin board service. Now you're a pretty young guy, but you might remember the BBS, bulletin board service.
BBS.
You remember the BBS. So we became the largest bulletin board service in Canada at the time. This is 1992.
Wow.
But at that time, Mozilla launched. This was a new browser for the internet, something called the Information Superhighway. And we launched Internet Direct. And it now, in order to launch Internet Direct, we needed the phone lines because there was so much demand for the internet. We actually had to shut down our second business within 12 months of launching it. We shut down ComputerLink and put all the resources into Internet Direct. See, back then, you couldn't go to a bank and say, oh, I have this thing called a BBS or internet. It was like going to a bank and saying, I'm an alien from another planet. Will you give me money?
Yeah, right.
All right. So we launched this internet company. It becomes the fastest growing company in Canada. Number one, we're on the front page of Profit Magazine. We were a public company. We decide, Kevin, and this is like, I'm starting right away with something that's maybe this book really delves into, that this isn't always about successes, but also failures. Okay. And what we can learn from failures. We launched that company. We grew it to about 300 people. We went public. We merged it with a cable company in 1999.
Okay.
Well, the Canadian government issues some licenses and awards the license for fixed internet in Canada, 50% of that license to our company. Our publicly traded stock rises to over $1 billion. I'm 29 years old and I own 13% of this company at this point.
Wow.
But we had merged it. Now I was no longer in control. Okay. And when we merged it, I agreed to an 18-month lockup. Now, what happens in March of 2000?
I am trying to remember what happened in March of 2000. Wow. You tell me what happened in March of 2000.
Well, a judge announced that Microsoft would be broken up, and the NASDAQ crashed from 5,000 to 4,000, which are the people in charge of the company now said, well, you know what? Let's wait till the market comes back. We're doing a $50 million offering. Let's wait till the market comes back. And the market, as you know, didn't come back. It went to as low as 1,200. The NASDAQ took 15 years for it to come back.
Yeah.
That was the .com crash.
Yes. That's
Lesson number one, bad things happen. So that's our third company. So you might be saying right now, so why is this guy on my show when his first three companies were blowouts? And the reality is, fast forward 6 years later, or even right away, we focused on what we love, which is building internet companies, my brother and I, and we did an IPO in 2006. We sold to a Fortune 500 company in 2008, and this time we did it for all cash. Okay, so that's the second lesson from this failure. At 29 years old, losing $100 million personally, it hurt. It was hell. I'll be honest. It was bad for my reputation. I couldn't even I was just devastated by it.
Yeah.
But we focused on what we loved, and the lesson I learned from that is liquidity or control. We will no longer, because a lot of your listeners are very seasoned entrepreneurs, right? So we will no longer sell a company unless we have liquidity or control. And the second lesson is bad things happen. We sold 4 or 5 companies, very successful exits, including recently a company called .club, which was an alternative to .com, .net, .org. And we got up to 1 million domain names, and we sold that to GoDaddy Registry 2 years ago. Very successful exit. I now run an incubator of 10 companies, maybe 12, and I actually am involved or invested in about 25 companies.
Okay.
It's too much. One of my lines in the book, you like this one. It's near the end of the book. Entrepreneurship is a drug. That's it. And I'm actually serious. And as entrepreneurs, we do have to look at the sort of the roller coaster and how it impacts our family. And I do talk a little bit about that at the end. The book primarily focuses on the formula, the code of what it takes to make a successful startup. How can a startup be successful? What are those ingredients? Is it formulaic? And I'm telling you right now, Kevin, it's absolutely formulaic. And that's what we uncovered in all this research years after years, all myself doing it. I was called to do a speech in 2012. I mentioned that it took 10 years to put this book together. It started with a person, my CEO coach, Patrick Thean from Rhythm Systems. Let me tell you what he did. He called me into MIT Masters of Entrepreneurship and asked me to speak on why I had so many successful exits. And by the way, guess what he also said? How are you so good at your timing? See, he didn't know about Internet Direct. He knew about the publicly traded company called Hostopia, which, by the way, closed 1 month before the Lehman crisis.
Wow.
1 month. He knew about Two Cows. Two Cows is another big company. Today it's worth about 400 million or something like that. He knew that company, and he knew we had closed that before the .com crash. So he kept seeing us do these companies and sell them and be successful. And yet we always seem to do it at the right timing. So he asked me to speak. I did a 4-hour lecture at MIT. And what we really did was try to uncover the patterns of success. Every company needs 4 components: a great story, great people, the money to get you there, or at least to get you to your first stage gate point in time that you can get new investors, and systems. And by the way, it's very different at start, very different at scale, very different at exit, and even different at repeat. And that's what this book does. It lays out a formula for each level. So if you haven't even started your business, this book starts with that. If you've started your business, and like a lot of your listeners, you've been doing very well, but you want to scale your business, that, by the way, is the largest section of this book, scale. Okay. And we talk about the story, the people, the money, and the systems. And there's one thing on story that can make an impact better than anything else. So if you want to ask me about that, I'd be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, Absolutely. I'd love to
Jump
hear
right
that.
in? Jump right in. I
Yeah,
feel like
jump
I'm
right in.
dominating the conversation. Okay.
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine, Colin. This
It's
is
funny
great.
because I just did a speech at an e-commerce convention last week, and the topic was, he asked me the question. He goes, what is the number one thing you can do to scale your business? And I said, find an X factor. Find an X factor. Think Domino's Pizza, 30 minutes are free. Think
Yeah.
National Car Rental. Just show up and get in the car and go. There's a company in Texas called Cookie Delivery. They had a problem. They're competing with all the other bakeries. So the cookies would arrive at their customers and they would be cold. They decided to invest in vehicles where they cooked the cookies on the way to their customer.
Wow.
My company, Hostopia, it was a software platform that sold email and web hosting to telecoms all over the world. Well, we were confronted with a very large bid. And in fact, I had got the call the day before we're going to lose the bid. Okay. My CTO and I, we flew to Atlanta, and I had to get in a car. I had to get in something called a Wego. Wego has 2 seats. And my buyer, talk about relationship, what you do for relationships here. Okay. Because you do anything. And we're talking about, this company is Earthlink. It's been documented well. And it was a company that had, we were bidding on millions of emails and 80,000 websites.
Okay.
So he says, okay, let's go to lunch. But the problem is because we came in by taxi. At the time they didn't have Uber. So we came, we're in there. And so, well, I got to take you in my car. Okay, but they only have 2 seats. And this is a tiny little car. And he says, I said, I'll sit in the trunk. So they pushed me into the trunk, and I'm like literally clamped into the trunk, and we drove to the restaurant. He says, look, this is the issue. I said, well, we'll guarantee your migration 100%. See, our customer at Hostopia were not telecoms. It wasn't AT&T. It wasn't Bell Canada. It wasn't British Telecom. It wasn't Vodafone. It was the mid-level executive who had to make a decision whether or not they were going to outsource. And trust me, we were up against big companies. We were up against Vario. We were up against Hostway. We were up against some much larger companies than us. So we came in and we said, you know what? We're going to guarantee that you will not lose a website on this migration. See, the number one thing that he was worried about was losing his job. Period. I don't care what you say. In a company like that, just lose your job. Of course, they want to look like a hero, but that's number 2. Okay. So how do we make, and this is relationship with customers, right? How do we ensure we take care of their needs, their underlying needs, number 1, and then how do we make them look like a hero?
Yeah.
So we came out with this idea that we will be the best in the world at migrations. And our nearly unbearable brand promise, the one that makes you feel sick, the 30 minutes are free pizza delivery, was we will 100% migration guarantee and we'll pay you market value for every website we lose. Well, let me tell you what happened. We had to re-engineer our organization. By the way, do you think Domino's did? Do you think Cookie Delivery did? Do you think National Car Rental did? You have to re-engineer your organization. Absolutely re-engineer it. And we did that. We had 200 people in Ukraine working on these migrations. We created the best software in the world. We became the best at migrations. And guess what? The dominoes fell one after another. After that contract, we won AT&T, we won Vodafone, we won British Telecom, we won Verizon, we won every single contract. We walked away. Just like Domino's is the leader, just like National Car Rental is the leader. And I know Cookie Delivery is killing it in Texas as well.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing example. We, as entrepreneurs, I've been to a number of events or presentations where people would give the example of Domino's, and that story has been around for many years and stuff. But what an amazing story this is of how, just real application and how to, just put yourself in a category of one. And so in doing that, I mean, that's a bold move. that's a bold move, because how much would it cost? I mean, what was on the line, worst case scenario, if you had to refund or make good on this promise? Because that couldn't have been cheap in some of these cases and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. So at Hostopia, we would, at the time, a fair market value for a website was $350.
Okay.
And we were migrating 80,000 websites.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So we're talking about, I mean, I think we might have had a limitation of liabilities of 5 million or something. So we didn't bankrupt the company. Okay. So
Sure.
let's be clear. So if all goes wrong, but every one of our competitors say that's impossible. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Guess what? I was 17 years old. My family owned a pizza restaurant in Toronto. And there was a company called Pizza who copied Domino's, who said they're going to do 30 minutes for free. You know what we said at the pizza restaurant? Oh, they're going to go bankrupt. It's impossible. That's what we're talking about. If you can find a bottleneck in your industry, if you can be unique and different, something that no one else has.
Yeah.
You know, in our incubator, we have we have a company that's called Escape Club, 19 Airbnbs. It's a combination of hotel grade with vacation rentals. We have Westin Heavenly Beds in all of our locations in Fort Lauderdale and North Captiva. So I'm with my management team and I say to them, you know, we had our strategic planning and, you know, what should we do? We get a couple days later, I came back and said, well, you know what? Let's have another meeting. And here's what our strategic plan is going to be, or ideation. Let's talk about what could be our X factor. Oh my gosh, you should have seen how it changed the room. We were on this island called North Captiva. And we're like, okay, what could be our X factor versus how can we better? How can we do it better? This, that. Okay, what if we did a miniature golf course for all your properties on the island, and only the people who rent your properties get access to that miniature golf? Oh, wow. What if we took the dock that we own and said only the properties on that island get access to that dock? Oh, wow. So that's what we're talking about, something unique and different. So can you do an ideation session with your team to ask what could be our X factor? And that's very different than some of the ideation sessions you may have done in the past.
Totally. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So now that we've got some context set here, Colin, which, man, that was really fascinating. I'm going to shift gears just a bit. I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Colin, I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, and I'd like to sort of break it into two stories.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. I'm going to start with the number one most important thing, your people and your company.
Okay.
In 2004, we were looking for a new operations manager to run our call center. And we had a habit of profiling. We used the DISC profile method. Okay. And I am a very big believer in systems. We talk a lot about that in the book. And I'm a big believer in profiling. Profiling for business partners and for employees, because I think skills can be learned. So I received the resumes and the profiles of prospective employees that the vice president of operations sent me to run the call center. And I'm looking at them, and then all of a sudden one pops out to me. He had a very high dominance and very high I influence. And I said, I'd like to talk to this guy. This is amazing. Turns out the guy had sold his company for a pretty decent amount, traveled the world for 2 years, and wanted to come back and get back in the game. And I said, well, that's this guy. I got to interview him. I interviewed him. Not only did he take the role of the person who he reported to and became chief operating officer of the company, after I left the company, he became CEO. And a few years ago, I actually called him back and hired him as CEO of a company that I'm working with right now.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
I cannot tell you how important profiling and getting the right personality profile. I am not a salesperson, okay? I'm an introvert, truly. And I get scared shitless if I have to sell and pitch and even money. But I do the money pitch thing. I did IPOs, I did the roadshows. So I know if I had to do it, but honestly, I was more nervous in my life selling than doing anything else. Maybe something else, but I won't talk about that. Relationships. I'm talking about relationships, okay? So the fact is, if we can find the right people and the right profiles, and we can connect with them, it could make a huge difference. We go into detail in the book about profiling and the differences. Now, let me tell you one thing that's absolutely free that you can do that entrepreneurs don't do enough. And I was guilty of this for the first 20 years of my career. 2 words, Kevin.
Okay.
Recognize greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to repeat it. Recognize greatness. Those 2 words, they became a universal value in all of my companies. We recognize those individuals. Do you know that almost half employees leave because they don't believe they're being recognized?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know that almost half employees leave because they don't believe in their bosses or the mission of the company, or they don't believe that they've been listened to or they are understood? We need to start wrapping our startups around our employees, not the opposite. I say in the book, I say, pay your people with love, ownership, and freedom. What do I mean by that? Love, recognize them. It doesn't cost you a lot. When they do a good job, my gosh, recognize them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not about you, the CEO. Yeah, it might feel good to say, I am the one who did this. I did this. Da, da, da. No, recognize them. Understand their goals. Where do they want to be in 5 years? How do you help them get there? How do you help them moonlight and do a startup on the side? How do you help them do that and then maybe even hire them to run one of your companies down the road? Give them ownership in the company. I give ownership in the company. Look, money is oxygen in every startup. And so one thing we can give is ownership. We have a company that I'm working with right now. He's a gentleman who's worked for me for 25 years ago. He just came over a year ago. We gave him 10% of the company. He was working for $250,000. He's now working for 120. I hope he doesn't listen to this show, but actually I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because he's okay with it because he gets 10% of the company and total freedom. And the freedom is the last component of that. This has been an advantage that startups have had over big companies for many years, is giving total freedom. Work where you want, when you want, where you want, all of it. We're here. We're more flexible than the big companies. I had a lady who's worked at Startup Club, and that lady, she came in here at 3:00. She picks her son up. Son comes to the incubator. We have a big hall, so he plays soccer all day long. She decided to move to Chicago. No problem. It doesn't matter where you bring your dog to work. We're going to give them freedom. So we're going to give them with love, ownership, and freedom. We have to take it to another level, startups, because we are in competition with Fortune 5,000, Fortune 10,000 companies who offer salaries that are sometimes double, triple than what we can afford. So it's all about relationship when it comes to our employees. And then I want to talk about a personal relationship, but that's what I wanted to start. Maybe I can get a little bit of thought from you about your experience in this as well.
Well, so Colin, you are speaking to the choir right now as far as when it comes to relationships and honoring other people and showing appreciation. Because I will tell you, over the years, I have been really blessed to just be able to build relationships and friendships with some entrepreneurs who are doing amazing things in this world. And I can tell you from personal experience that no matter how successful somebody is, no matter how great things look from the outside looking in, there is not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. And when we just, like you said, show appreciation, give acknowledgement to others, this genuine appreciation, it carries so much weight. And it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, it can be the waiter or waitress that is serving us lunch or dinner. Just be appreciative. It goes so far, you know.
And let me add, if I could add, at Hostopia, we got up to 600 employees. Okay. We had about 300 call center agents, and there were technical support, like trying to help people with their email, the hosting, and all that kind of stuff. And, this might sound a little bit controversial. Okay. Cause I'm gonna actually, I go there in the book. All right. I can't stand birthdays and, exit dinners. We're gonna have a big dinner or party for the person who's leaving the company. I don't like to celebrate those things. Now, I said push that to a monthly or whatever, because you have that many people. It was birthday every day. Okay. Here's what we did. We called it the 5 Diamond Award. So imagine you need to establish a relationship, even if you have a larger company. The 5 Diamond Award. We actually got real diamonds with real gold, real pins on you would get 1 diamond. We issued 2 a month to employees who were outstanding at customer service. And it was based on actual written compliments of that agent that was sent to their supervisor. And they would go up and they would be voted on, whoever got the best. So you get 1 diamond, 2 diamonds eventually. If you got 5 diamonds, not only did you get a full paid week vacation, and we paid you to go wherever you want, whatever.
Wow.
We also named the day in the company after that employee, and we paid for lunch for all 600 people.
Wow.
Can you imagine what kind of hero this person is, that you paid for lunch?
You bet.
That they were the ones who made that happen. And we got up to probably about once a month where people were starting to do that. Now that's, my friend, that, Kevin, is recognizing greatness.
Yes.
Truly.
Yeah.
And
what an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
So let me talk to you about another relationship. Okay. Let's go back 2006. I'm running a publicly traded company. And I'm 36 years old at the time. I had some fights with one of my business partners. There was fights within the organization. The revenue was flatlining. This was not looking too good. We had a board of directors meeting, and one of the board of directors came to me and said, this was before the meeting, said that we think you're over your head. You're too young. You don't have enough experience. You're over your head. And I managed to convince the board to just let me come back with a proposal. So I called a lifeline. I called a friend. He said, okay, I'm over my head here. He says, okay, I know someone. He's a coach. Now understand, up to this age, Ed had done everything by ad hoc, and we had grown to 400 or 500 employees at the time, whatever it was. And I had been doing everything by ad hoc, my brother as well. And so I met with this gentleman in Vegas. It was at an entrepreneurs convention, an EO 20th anniversary entrepreneurs convention. And I met with this individual, and I said, look, I have this board of directors. I got to get him off my back. I'm going to lose my job. I'm about to get fired, and I'm CEO of the company here, right? So, and I was also a pretty substantial shareholder, but you know what? If you don't have the votes, the shares or the votes, then you pretty much got to deliver or you're out.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, I said, he's getting off the back, and he says, well, if I'm going to do it, you got to do this. You got to do 2 days of strategic planning. You got to do goals. And whoa, slow down. I don't need to do all that. You just need to get him off my back. This is sort of like going to the doctor, Kevin, and saying, I'm overweight. I just need the pill. I don't need to do and the doctor's saying, you got to eat healthy, do the workouts. I'm saying, no, I don't need all that. I just need the pill. So he said, I'm not going to work with you. Patrick was like, no, I'm not doing this. And he said, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it right, or I ain't doing it at all. I'm not going to do it at all. So he said, fine. What do I have to do? So we did 2 days of strategic planning, 90 days of execution, goal setting, weekly status updates, red, yellow, green, daily sales huddles. We also added on a sales system, creating a sales playbook. We did profiling. We did what I hadn't done for the prior 6 years of this company and 15 years of my career, is implement systems. Well, guess what? The company tripled in size. And
Wow.
then
Wow.
we sold it to Deluxe Communications, a Fortune 500 company, for 17 times EBITDA. The stock was trading at $4.55 a share. And the next morning, it was trading at $10.55 a share. And our shareholders walked away with huge profits, including the institutions that went into the IPO.
Wow.
And I credit that point in time to systems. Had we brought in systems 5 years earlier, we could have probably done it so much better. So a lot of entrepreneurs are out there. You're thinking, how do I scale? And one of the techniques we talk about in the book is systems and how to scale.
Yeah.
All right. We go into detail, and I quote a lot from the best and best out there. I interviewed Vern Harnish twice for the book, and he wrote the book Scaling Up.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
I interviewed Jeffrey Moore, who wrote Crossing the Chasm Inside the Tornado. I don't know if you know that book. Probably one of the most profound business books in my lifetime. It had a big impact on me. This book really covers the gambit of how to start, scale, exit, repeat. Well, let me tell you this. Patrick Thean, who runs Rhythm Systems, he's been my CEO coach to this day. And I use his goal-setting software on all of my companies. I love it. He does an amazing job. So maybe you can grab him as a guest one day.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Well, Colin, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation, because, I just really appreciate what you shared. And, one of the big goals in hosting this podcast is right from the get-go is, I've one of the, our listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, I wanted to be able to use these stories, these interviews, these conversations to just inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And with your help today, Colin, we have definitely achieved that. And so I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. You've mentioned your book. Let's make sure for anybody listening to this going, man, Kevin, I really like Colin. I like what he's all about. I like how he shows up. How can they find out more about your book, any other resources that you might have to offer them?
Well, what's cool is we actually hit #1 bestseller for starting a business on Amazon New Release today, 2 weeks after the book launched. I was like, oh my gosh, the message is getting out that you can start, scale, exit, repeat, and there is a formula behind all of that. You can go to Amazon, Audible, any channel out there, and just type in start, scale, exit, repeat, and you can get the book.
Perfect.
Published by the people at Forbes. Let me tell you, the people at Forbes Books, they did a phenomenal job. This book has over 200 callouts. It has 30 original illustrations. It's color-coded, 58 chapters, and it was written for the ADHD entrepreneur. It really is. So if you haven't read a physical book in a long time, this is the one to get, because it really covers everything in a very simple format. I've had people tell me that actually it was quite easy to read. It's quite big. I'll be honest. It's quite a big book. Forbes got really mad at me, the publisher, and said, this is double the size of the average book. You can't do this. Well, you can't launching a business is not easy. Starting, scaling, exiting, and repeating, it's not easy. And I tried to cut back. I thought, could I cut the chapter on the right funding for the right type, which was an interview with Jenny Casson, who's a lawyer who wrote a book herself called the right type of funding. So I was like, if I take out funding, the whole thing could collapse. So anyway, we got so many serial entrepreneurs, experts, and authors in this book. We've designed it, color coded, designed for ADHD entrepreneurs. And the Audible, we were lucky to get Robert Graham, who's a very famous book reader, and he is the one who read the book as well. So
Awesome.
that's it.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you, Kevin. I feel like we got a relationship building here.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I will tell you, you know, yes, hosting this podcast has been hands down one of the most rewarding things I've done in my 27 years as an entrepreneur. And for a guy who facilitates relationships that impact millions of people, this has been such an amazing experience being the host of
Thank
this
you.
podcast and just
Thank you.
getting to get in touch with so many amazing entrepreneurs and just help facilitate these kinds of relationships, because it's us entrepreneurs that are making the big impact in the world. That's us, you know, it's that we're just we entrepreneurs who value relationships. And like you know, I mean, I definitely, you know, put, you know, what I call second stage entrepreneurs, where we're beyond this place of needing to create cash flow for sustainability. And now our focus is on impact. We want to use our business to make the biggest impact that we can. And I know that that's what inspires you too, is doing that, making your biggest impact in this world. And so, you know, when we get like-minded people together through like this podcast, man, it's incredibly rewarding and stuff. And so really appreciate you taking the time to share from your heart, share your experience, and I'm excited to get this interview out there. So thanks again, Colin. Really appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Kevin.